So, Brad, do you remember back when we were just little wee tykes? This university, Southern Methodist, got into a little bit of trouble with the NCAA.
Pony Express, baby.
Pony Express, or Pony Excess for those that are a little bit older. The ESPN 30 for 30, which was fantastic, great thing. So one thing that you might not remember from it is that the NCAA only put them on probation for 1 year, just 1 year of the death penalty.
Yeah.
Then SMU looked at it and went, actually, we're going to need an extra year to ramp back up to get ready to play for football.
Reasonable.
The Pac-12 and the Big Ten just did that. Just go on ahead and give it to us. Just give it to us. Just give it to. We need to take a year off. Don't get me wrong, for a good reason. But yeah, we don't need to play football for a year. Just 1 year. We might play in the spring. It'll be fun.
You know, Early, sometimes them football boosters will provide your family with a car or even house if you keep nice and quiet about it. They're gonna do what now?
Welcome to the place where if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying is a way of life.
Just keep it down home, cuz.
Where degenerate gamblers can congregate in peace.
Money, yeah. Money, yeah.
Where screaming at 20-year-old kids on a TV is just another Saturday.
Every fiber in your bone, and you take it and you beat the piss out of them. I'm talking about beat the piss out of them. Let's go whip their ass. Let's go.
Where game days don't end until the Rainbow Warriors say so.
It hits the upright. Oh my God! It hits the left upright. It hits the left upright.
They are the bagmen that Danny Sheridan never found.
I went to him with a strong-ass offer.
And it all comes to you with a splash of bourbon on the side. Woo! This is the Friends of the Program podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into the inaugural Friends of the Program podcast. I am Brad Tillery. That's Drew McCracken. If you happen to be watching on YouTube, if you're listening via some kind of podcast streaming service, well, you'll hear his lovely voice in a second, or you heard it in the cold open. So glad to have you all along. Drew, you and I have been talking about doing this for a while. We're finally getting around to it. We've been kind of waiting for the right time. And with all the uncertainty around college sports coming up, it felt like now's the right time because of the news that broke. And I'm happy to be here, buddy.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for the kind words and the welcome. It is a bit of an odd time for an outsider to look at it and say, well, why are you guys starting a college sports or a sports podcast when everything is so up in the air, if you will, with in terms of play or not play, or is there even going to be any college football? Probably not. I mean, you know, when you look at everything that you've got coming out and all that's being said, and you know, just on Twitter this morning, everybody that's saying, you know, people aren't wearing masks and doing this, and we need to blah blah blah, and everything should be safer on the campuses. I mean, theoretically, sure, but yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty right now.
Yeah, it's going to be weird. We think it's still going to be fun. So, folks, if you're really want to know what we're about, we want this to be fun. We're a couple of dudes who have broadcasting backgrounds. Haven't really put them to use in quite a while for professional reasons. But, you know, I'm a former play-by-play guy for minor league baseball team. I still do play-by-play for high school football here in Texas and some college sports around here as well. Also worked in television and other parts of radio. Drew, he's been on radio as well, both on air and on the back end. He's especially amazing, engineering and doing all kinds of stuff on the back end. So we're also incredibly huge college sports fans, and sports fans in general. We'll probably talk a little bit of everything throughout this podcast over the course of time, but the focus is largely going to be on college sports. Football, basketball, baseball, whatever else happens to pop up. You know, we both love hockey, so I think we may even talk a little Frozen 4 when it comes time. Who knows?
And we also like ponies too. Ponies are fun.
And I'm not giving that away.
Ponies
That's what I'm hoping we can get a guest on in a couple of weeks to really get into some ponies. I'm not equestrian, folks. Really talking the racehorse kind. But we'll talk about that hopefully in a couple of weeks. We're working on a surprise on that side. But we want this to be fun for everybody. And there's another key aspect to this podcast, and that is, well, we both like to drink bourbon.
This is true. This is a very true statement.
Yeah, so we're holding up our glasses here. If you happen, like I said, to watch on YouTube, I've got the Wheeler's Raid Rye going this week.
Ooh, that's a good call.
Yeah, well, that's a hookup from everybody.
Well, thank you very much.
Out in Nashville, where around the area where Drew lives.
It is a brand new-ish distillery. Just a couple of years old. They're just starting to put out some of their really good stuff. I will be sipping on the sherry cask finish that my lovely wife got me for our anniversary, the 109, which sounds a little bit hot.
Where you got gifted that?
Yes, you were. But the 109 sounds like it would be a little bit hot, but as Brad will attest, it's got a slight touch of a burn, but not enough to where you would be to where you would think a 109 would be.
Yeah, the rye that I'm sipping on it's a quality rye. A lot of folks are either yes on rye or heck no on rye. I'm actually somewhat indifferent on most ryes, but this is a quality oak flavor on the back end. Nice little strong aftertaste to it. So big fan of it, and sipping on that while we go through podcast number 1 here today of Friends of the Program. If you're thinking, why Friends of the Program? Well, if you're a college sports fan, hopefully you understand the reference that, well, not all college players necessarily are amateur, really. You have
there's a beautiful facade in college football, and in college basketball's also gotten there. Oh yeah, basketball's been even worse. But in the SEC, where we obviously, if you look back here at some of my decor, Friends of the Program is basically what somebody's called if they help out in the recruiting side of things. So while
you showed up at your house, somebody helped us out. It's no big
deal.
Got
an Escalade, got a brand new suit, you're fine. It just showed up.
And if you maybe screw up a little bit, you fall up the stairs in Memphis. Who knows?
Just keep it down home, cuz.
Yeah, it's the rules. As Drew mentioned, we're both Auburn grads, so there will be times with game. This will be SEC centric. We're not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. We are from that part of the country originally, although we live a little bit everywhere now. But today, actually, we're going to focus on the Big Ten and the Pac-12. Our guest today is Chris Solari. He is the beat writer for Michigan State at the Detroit Free Press. He's the man who actually broke the story about the Big Ten canceling the season. He had it a day before anybody else did, and was out there and was taking a lot of heat because the Big Ten said, whoa, we haven't made that decision yet. But he got it right, and he had the story initially. He even had the vote count right, everything. Chris is a good friend of mine from when I used to live in Michigan. Really good guy, and he's got some amazing insight that we're going to tap into later on the whole Big Ten thing. But before we get into it, man, it really is, and you and I have talked about the chess game that we think the SEC and the ACC are playing with each other, but also playing with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, more or less the Big Ten and the Pac-12. I think the Pac-12 is just going to do whatever the Big Ten is going to do because they're kind of intertwined.
Yeah.
And it's funny that this all hinges theoretically on the Big 12 right now. Because if they play, it seems like the ACC and the SEC are going to go because that's enough to make more of a college football tournament at the end of the year. But there's so many moving parts to everything that's gone on over the last few weeks. So let's recap. First, you had the ACC come out and say, we're going to play conference only +1 game. And the ACC, in a power move, and make no mistakes, folks, this was a power move. They've tried to make the extra rule that the extra 1 game had to be played in state for their ACC team, meaning they could keep the Florida State game, the Louisville Kentucky game. They're all in the same state. All those, and there's 4 ACC SEC rivalries. But what that didn't take into account is, example, Auburn and North Carolina. We're going to play a game this year in Atlanta, week number 2 of the season. That game got scratched because North Carolina, being under the new rule, has to play in the state of North Carolina. And there are folks on the ACC side who are saying, well, why don't you play the game or come to North Carolina? Why are you chickening out? Here's the logical question. Why is it okay for teams to go to Atlanta and play Georgia Tech during the conference season, but North Carolina can't go 2 miles down the road from Georgia Tech's campus? And I'm not kidding you. It's 2 miles.
Not a joke. Not a joke at all.
Georgia Tech's campus to Mercedes-Benz Stadium to keep a game with Auburn. It doesn't make any sense.
No, and you're absolutely right. It was a complete power move by the ACC and really well done. And it also pointed out what the SEC's plan is. The SEC's plan is to wait and see, which has served them very well. And I absolutely love the leadership of Greg Sankey so far. I think he and Commissioner Swafford and even the Big 12 commissioner, Bob Bowlesby, I think all three have done masterful jobs and really pointed out the inadequacies of Commissioner Warren in the Big Ten and the Pac-12 commissioner, Larry Scott.
And not to stop you, Drew, but I think you and I both agree. The season could absolutely still get canceled. We're
absolutely.
Not saying that it should be played one way or the other.
No.
We're not trying to be doctors. We do think the season can absolutely still be canceled and for legitimate reasons. It's just you and I are on the same page of maybe some conferences are moving a little too early.
And that's more my argument because, I've been telling people for a couple of months that our college football fans around where I live, put on your mask if you enjoy college football because we need to try to keep the numbers down or contain this thing because the fewer people that have this, the more we can go out and play.
Yes.
And that's, falling on some ears and falling on deaf others. Regardless of my feelings towards if it's real or not or whatever. I just want football. So if I in my head, I'm still 60-40 that there won't be football. I have hope that there is a way that the universities can encapsulate as much as possible because, again, with both of us going to SEC schools or Division I schools, let's even say, we both know what all goes into the education benefits of being an athlete. We both know about the tutorship programs. We both know about just how much you can, I hate the word get away with, but how much leeway you have as an athlete or how much aid the school can. The support system. That's a great way to put it.
And I've actually been a tutor for the
exactly
before. It's unbelievable. And it's not like the kids get an option of going to tutoring. They have to be in study hall and in tutoring at certain hours after practice every day.
So I'm as long as there's not an attendance policy, which I'm sure that there's not anymore. I don't think you could really institute that, especially on a big campus. Like in Alabama, like in Auburn, like in LSU, to where you could have those, kids in a 200-seat auditorium for world history. So there are ways to do it. There are feasible ways that I think you could get it done. It's the question of can you get 80 to 100 kids to not go to the bar, to not go see their girlfriend or her friend or her friend. Because again, these are 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. In fact, Auburn just got a commitment / enrollee yesterday. He committed to Auburn, a wide receiver out of Virginia, because Virginia's not playing high school ball this year.
Yeah, and that's the question is how many kids from Justin Fields, like it's his last year of college ball. He's going pro next year. There's no questions about this, right?
Yeah.
Does he sit out? Does he wait for spring? Does he think about going somewhere else if somebody else is going to play?
And I'll jump ahead on you on that one. Think about Auburn had 84 scholarship athletes as of yesterday morning at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. At 8 a.m. they had 85. Tell me another school that's got 85. And oh, by the way, before we move on, think about the kids that are already in the portal. You've got Boobie Whitlow, who scored a ton of touchdowns for Auburn.
Yeah.
And you've got a ton of others that are still looking for programs.
And the thing is, I think there's so much opportunity for some of these smaller conferences to potentially pick off some players who want to transfer to play this year, whatever the case may be. Now, the MAC is already canceled. The Mountain West is already canceled, a few others. But the Sun Belt looks like they're going to play right now. Conference USA looks like they're going to play. So, I mean, think about the UAB. You know, that seems like it would be a relatively easy place to recruit to for one season if you were looking for a transfer. Maybe a Marshall in there or something like that, a US, the AAC, if they end up playing. There's a lot of good schools there, right? With Cincinnati in play and Memphis and others. So it's a really intriguing year that I don't think you'll ever see anything like it again, obviously, because the pandemic it's a once-in-a-century event. We haven't seen this since 1918, right? But going back to that ACC thing, and this is where all this jumbles in, right? Where we talked about they made a power move. The SEC kind of made a power move on them and said, no, we're not doing that. And that's why they said conference only. And so many people who are I've seen out there like, well, the SEC doesn't want to play these rivalry games. No. The SEC doesn't want to be dictated to. If you understand culture at all, that's the way that goes.
Here's the other thing. The ACC needs South Carolina Clemson, or Clemson, South Carolina for them. They need Georgia Tech. They need Florida State. SEC doesn't need anybody.
No.
If I can remember us jokingly talking back in the spring, early summer, late spring, SEC would just play if there were 14 teams that wanted to play.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
They wouldn't care.
The model I saw somebody post that I wish the SEC would have gone with was to play 10+1, keep the 4 games with the ACC and state rivalries so they can have those games. But the other 10, because now you have ACC teams still looking for games, screw you, we're going to go play a 10-game, 1-week Big 12 ACC or SEC challenge. And that would have been amazing because you already had LSU, Texas on the schedule this year. You already had Oklahoma, Tennessee on the schedule this year. I'm missing. Ole Miss was going to play Texas Tech. So that's 3 games baked. Ole Miss was going to play Baylor, not Texas Tech. So that's 3 games baked already. You could find 7 other to match them up and down the schedule and have some fun. Alabama was already in talks with maybe playing TCU to replace that opener they lost. Right? You have an opening of how fun would an Auburn versus Oklahoma State game be on an offense, right? Give me Mississippi State versus Iowa State give me Mississippi State and Texas Tech and let the Pirate play Texas Tech this year.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it would have been amazing.
It would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
And even when you're just kicking around, some games, even Kansas State, Ole Miss sounds like something that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Ole Miss is playing Baylor already. They were going
I'm sorry.
already.
That's right. I just want to see Lane Kiffin out there doing things.
Don't we all? I mean, I know you and I are low-key excited about the future of the Egg Bowl with the Pirates and Joey Freshwater on 2 different sidelines, but that conversation's for another day.
That one, we might have to save that one for 2021.
That's an entire episode of just
the Egg Bowl is its own episode.
It is one of our favorite rivalries outside of the Iron Bowl. It really is.
For me, it's my favorite game that doesn't involve Auburn because I'm at the end of the day, I'm an Auburn fan. I'm going to watch their games. I also write for an Auburn website, so of course I'm going to pay attention to Auburn. But at the end of the day, if you give me my option of Texas, Oklahoma, or USC, UCLA, I'm taking Ole Miss, Mississippi State every dang time.
Pure hate and craziness happens all the time.
That's more the thing. It's pure hate because it's the Iron Bowl if you add brown party liquor, like not bourbon, but brown party liquor in the paint thinner can.
You're bringing in the Dickel is what you're doing.
You're bringing it, but it's not even it's the back of the shelf Dickel, like the dusty Dickel. Yeah, it's the rock gut, if you will.
Oh, that's awful. Yeah, it's one of our favorites. We'll talk about that down the road.
But that's way down the road.
Go hours on the Egg Bowl and El Asico, Iowa State for the uninitiated.
Yes. for the unwashed.
and others. And we will talk about it because we watch football from all over the country. But, getting back to all over the country aspect,
yes.
The Big 12 playing a linchpin kind of in all this right now. They've actually announced a slate of games for the 12th of September. The entire Big 12 has non-conference games. I think there's one game that's left to be announced. But 9 of the 10 teams are going to play, and they're all, lower level teams or group of 5 or 1 AA games. But it's a week after the traditional start of college football with Labor Day, but still looking at football as early as 9/12. It's interesting to note that the ACC and SEC, as long as nothing dramatic changes, it looks like they're going to go full bore with football.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Sun Belt is going to do whatever those two do because they're intrinsically twined geographically. It just makes sense. I think financially the Sun Belt sees an opportunity for Friday nights to own some things that maybe the Pac-12 would have had their Friday night game on ESPN.
Absolutely.
There's opportunity to be had. And even the AAC could see something like that, or Conference USA. I think there's all kinds of monetary implications that got to be thought about. But it seems like if the Big 12 wavers and goes away and decides not to play, then the ACC and the SEC at that point, with a non-majority of power conferences playing, are probably going to bow out too. I mean, get your thoughts, but I know we like to say, the SEC is going to do what they're going to do, but at some point, the pressure is going to be to cancel out.
You're absolutely right. I think that, and I'll even put it this way, the Big 12 or the ACC are the linchpin, just to spread the wealth.
I think we're going to agree with the SEC is the last holdout.
Yes, the SEC. I was listening to. I'm from extreme South Georgia, and I was listening to. Do what now?
That's putting it mildly.
22 miles from the Florida border. And I was listening to a roundtable for Georgia high school football. Don't ask why. I just try to get.
It looks like it sounds like something. Kind of like,
when you go line up and play the football,
football playing. I kid you not, that's what a play-by-play broadcast sounds like down there.
Absolutely, Durwood Dominic. Shout out to you. Reason why I wanted to get into radio was him and Jim Fife. But I was listening to a roundtable, and of course they were talking about, Fulton County up in Atlanta, and they're kind of iffy on they want to play, and DeKalb County. Then they said, but I was down in Region 1, and they're 100% in. And I was talking to a coach, and I asked him, so how many on the testing? How's the testing going? No positives. We have no positives. Well, sure, you don't. If you haven't been testing, if you don't have any tests, of course you have no positives.
Well, okay.
So yeah, I think the only region of football on the map that is more in than the SEC is Region 1 in the state of Georgia, or somewhere out in Texas. But the SEC
and that's where I live, right? I live right here in Central Texas, just outside of Austin. And the plan right now is to play high school football.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah. Now, they may not have fans in the stands, and they've actually lifted a rule here this year where usually you can't live stream a game or live video a game on Friday nights here because they want to get people to the stadiums. They've lifted that rule here this year to allow live streaming so people can watch from home. But it sounds like, by everything I'm seeing, we're probably going to play football. Now, starting later, the 2 highest divisions are going to start at the end of September. The other 4 divisions, which goes all the way down to 6-on-6 football, which is the craziest thing you'll ever see in your life, they are going to start on time. And those first lower 4 divisions will play their championships in December as normal, but the Class 5A, Class 6As will play their championships in January up in Dallas at some time. So it looks like we're going to play high school ball here, but I think also Texas, being Texas and the University of Texas and the eyeballs and the money that comes along with it, they're going to be the ones driving the bus here for whether or not we play football in the Big 12 as well.
And which makes absolute sense, because it's the reason why Texas A&M wanted out and went to the SEC. It's the reason why Nebraska wanted out of the Big 12 and went to the Big 10 and then became the Texas of the Big 10 somehow.
Yeah, somehow they went out of the Big 10 now.
Yeah, now they're their own island. We've been to Nebraska before. It is a lovely state.
There's good analysis on the Nebraska situation coming from Chris here in just a minute.
Absolutely. So yes, I think that the linchpin is the ACC and the Big 12. I'm interested to see. You saw the power play from Dabo Swinney, though. You saw the company line from Dabo Swinney earlier this week when he said that the Big 12 or the Big 10 being out of it really didn't matter to the national championship. That's a power move by Dabo to say, we really didn't need them anyway, so don't pay attention to them.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll take care of this. We'll do this. Let's not award it in the spring or wait. We'll just do it now.
Well, he doesn't have to contend with a decent team in Ohio State again in the playoff this year, who nearly beat them last year.
Yeah.
They should have. They missed a wide open touchdown towards the game. And then he's got a cakewalk of a schedule in the ACC to work through with no fans in the stands, theoretically, or very few fans, which, by the way, best year ever to have big rivalry games on the road.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
With nobody in the stands. If you're going to play, for those who are thinking about it from another perspective, that's the year you want to play the rivalry games on the road. But he's certainly, for him and a selfish reason, of course he wants to play. Like, he knows what he has coming back. I think all the other top teams that you would normally think about, there's a lot of question marks. Alabama, they're breaking in a lot. They're breaking in Mac Jones for a full season, who I think highly of Mac Jones. I think he's very, very good and is only going to get better. But they've got a tough slate. They do play Georgia in the regular season this year. Of course, LSU just won the national title with arguably the greatest team I've ever seen play college football. And they're replacing a lot besides just Joe Burrow. If you look at the draft this year,
oh my gosh,
half of their starters. Auburn's replacing 2 lines on each front. So a lot of skill positions back, but the offensive,
you gotta have time to throw it to them.
Offensive and defensive lines are total question marks for Auburn this year. And we can keep going down the list. Florida seems like they may have a real shot this year. I think if Florida's going to get to Georgia in the East, in the SEC, this is the year because of what they have coming back. So, Dabo, from his perspective, he's like, hey, this is a really good opportunity for Clemson to win the whole thing. So, of course, he's going to make that argument.
Absolutely. Well, and then when you look at the ACC, there's literally nothing in the ACC standing in their way again.
No.
There's
my Pitt's awesome jerseys, but that's about it.
Well, that's true, but other than that, and then you look over at the Big 12, there's not a whole lot standing in Oklahoma's way either. The question that I have, if this is huge, if we do play football, and if we do get past 3 games, and if we can make it to the postseason, and we get to a selection committee, is this the year that the SEC gets 3 teams in to the playoffs?
That's where you're going to go. Is this the year that a group of 5 finally sneaks their way in?
Or it could be that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at a UCF, and I mean, Memphis is breaking in a new head coach. The UCF is literally the only thing in the AAC.
They were not at all.
No. So
I don't know, man. It's going to be a wild year if we end up playing, and I think
if
that you brought up are big. But the decisions being made around the country about whether or not to play, what goes into them, they're still being made, as we've been talking about in several conferences. But at least 2 major conferences have already made that call, and that's the Pac-12 and the Big 12. And we're going to throw it over here in just a second to an interview with Chris Solari. Chris Solari is the Michigan State beat writer for the Detroit Free Press. You can follow him on Twitter at Chris Solari, spelled Solari. Really good guy, knows his stuff. He's the one who broke the story on Monday of last week that the Big 12 was going to cancel the season. He had it a full 24 hours before anybody else did. In fact, the Big 12 came out denying his report initially, but everything was accurate. He's going to walk us through what went through that reporting process, what went through the decision-making process. We're going to talk a little bit of Nebraska, and we're going to talk about some interesting beer selections he's now finding up in Michigan as well. So stick around after this quick little intermission of about 10 seconds. We'll throw it over to Chris Solari in our interview with him. Well, we are excited to introduce to you guys our very first guest. We sent the bagmen all over the country with sacks of cash, and they ended up in mid-Michigan and found Chris Solari. He is the Michigan State University beat writer for the Detroit Free Press and also knows all things Big Ten athletics. Chris, welcome in to Friends of the Program on episode 1 here, bud.
I'm glad to do this, and if you hear a few things in the background, the bagmen are taking care of those kids back there.
Hey, we put a little something extra in there, sent the wife.
You pay me in babysitters, that's all that we need.
So, Chris, it was Monday that you tweeted out earlier last week, actually, now that Big Ten football was probably going to be canceled. You caught some flack because the Big Ten came out with an announcement after that saying, well, hold on, not going to happen. Turns out your reporting was spot on. Walk us through that whole process of how you got the information, what the decision-making was back for the Big Ten, and why they decided to cancel.
Yeah, so first, you got to go back to the previous weekend where the Big Ten presidents were meeting on Saturday. They had a scheduled meeting. Then on Sunday, they had a meeting that was shifted, that wasn't planned. What happened then was what came out of that was the decision not to play football. So the following day and that night, the presidents at Michigan and Michigan State were briefing their constituents about this, and then Monday morning they were telling members outside of the university community on the governor's return to school committee about the fact that there would be no football this fall. So we were comfortable in our sourcing, but I think where things get tenuous is that you've seen so much over the course of the past few months. Well, really, it has been a few years and a few months, hasn't it? I mean, that's kind of what it's been like. But, you started to hear rumblings, and obviously the Big Ten went into denial mode and kind of figured that out when you saw that, Dan Patrick and we confirmed that the 12-2 vote. The Big Ten doesn't like things to get out that aren't completely unanimous and in lockstep. So that was a big reason for that. And then I think the other thing that you started to hear were rumblings from coaches. There was a lot of noise out of Ohio, a lot of noise out of Nebraska, 2 states where they're getting a lot of political pressure. So our sources continue to tell us, no, there will be no football. The presidents have briefed us on this. There will be no football, and there will be a Tuesday announcement. So that was continuous throughout. Thought maybe the players would be told on Monday, but they weren't. They were told Tuesday, as everybody else was. So it's been a crazy week or so, and this is all after the players had their united front on Twitter Sunday night, Monday morning. So, that was a crazy, chaotic 48 hours right there. But yeah, what it ultimately comes down to is university presidents had already told people that there would be no football this fall, and that's where you saw the backlash.
Chris, my question more comes from an SEC Southeastern fan viewpoint. How much of a shift was it to go from Wednesday, we get a schedule for the Big Ten, to on Sunday and Monday, that 24, 48-hour shift, to where it goes from scheduled to no football? What were the points that came in to make that change?
Well, I think the big thing, Kevin Warren, I thought particularly when they released that schedule on that Wednesday, was upfront. He said, "This is just a plan. This is absolutely subject to change. There's no definitive thought that we will have football this fall." He was upfront over that. Now, when they made the announcement, I don't necessarily know if he did himself any favors with talking in cliches and speaking in circles. But I think what the difference was that came up was the more information about myocarditis, and more importantly, more information without much back. There's a lot of they don't have reasons why this is happening, but they are seeing it more in elite athletes. I think that gave the presidents in particular a reason to put the brakes on everything. And really, I think what you saw him in that Wednesday to Saturday, Sunday window. You saw the president seize back the conversation from the athletic folks. It was a couple days, I think, of nerds versus jocks, if you will. And
nerd style with like the violin going on in the background at the pep rally. Like that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was, I think that was the big difference. That's what, ultimately the presidents, when you've got, especially at Michigan and Michigan State, both of those doctors that are presidents of the universities are specialists in infectious diseases and immunology. So they have a better grasp on some of the medical findings and uncertainties. I think that's the big thing is this is uncertainties that's really causing the Big Ten to put the brakes on the fall season. They don't know what they don't know is driving their decision making, I think, at this point.
And Chris, what's the reality of Big Ten football being played this year?
I don't really know how physically they're going to be able to. You start talking 8-10 games in the spring and then 8-10 games in the fall. It's a lot of wear and tear. Urban Meyer actually talked about this. He called it a hit count. He said the hit count for a season is 2,000. And, usually that means scaling back on guys. That's your starters. Scaling back on guys come springtime. If you aren't able to have that ability, I don't know how physically possible it will be. But from a financial standpoint, there's no question the Big Ten needs that money. I think all college football conferences right now that are canceling. This isn't just a Big Ten issue. You're talking everything all the way from the Pac-12 down to the Mountain West and some of these other conferences that have decided to cancel right now need the financial buffer. And again, this is all dependent on what happens with the virus, what happens with research. More importantly, and I talked to a friend of mine, and you talk about friends of the program. A friend of mine from high school that I graduated with happens to be an infectious disease specialist on the NCAA COVID panel. So, never thought I would need that sourcing.
I was going to say, coming from Butler, PA there too, man.
Yep, exactly. And, that's Dr. Amish Adalja at Johns Hopkins. But we've spoken pretty much once, twice a month since all this began. And, one of the things that he said most recently when I talked to him, when the Big Ten presidents were meeting that Saturday before they made their decision, is the testing is a problem. They not only the volume of testing that you need for football, but the reason, the ability to get the results back quickly. That's a significant issue because, what good is testing them 3 times a week if you still haven't had Monday's test back on Friday? You're not, that's not reliable. The volume of testing doesn't matter. It's how quickly can you get the response back. So you could be sending guys into a Saturday game not knowing if they are or aren't positive, and that's not a safe environment. And I think that that's the one thing that I think between that and the potential for not spread within the team during competition, but spread from the community back. I think that's something that is a real factor in this. There's too many unknowns about what is going on and what could happen, and quite frankly, the lack of science to be caught up to where football needs to be and society. But again, we're dealing with unprecedented times, unprecedented challenges. The scientific community, I think, has risen greatly to get to the point where we're at. When I spoke with Amish back in March and April, he told me it would take a year to a year and a half at minimum to get a vaccine. So And in talking to one of my sources, and I haven't even really reported this, so this is breaking news for the program. This is for insiders.
What we do. Episode 1.
This is for the big money people.
Exactly.
A source of mine who understands many facets of this told me that they do not see football being played until there is a vaccine. Wow. So whatever you think about spring season versus spring and fall versus just fall versus whatever, that's a real concern. And that's going to be, once the corner's turned with this, once the determination is made with basketball, what's going to happen in the winter sports, then the next question is, when do we compete again? And if that's the case, and if you can't keep because the bubble-like environment is something they're going to have to talk about. And, if they aren't able to create that from a standpoint of keeping these guys from being professional athletes, then you got to start thinking that the vaccine is the only way to get back to competition at the college level.
So, Chris, I heard Ryan Day a couple of days ago speaking that he was looking for direction from the conference as far as a current schedule, not so much a spring schedule, although I think that he would love to have that right now for NFL purposes, trying to get the draft redirected and all that. But he was looking for more of a schedule of what to tell his players as far as practicing things of that nature and that kind of direction. Has the conference released anything like that or given anybody any direction?
Nothing yet. And I talked to Mel Tucker, Michigan State's new coach, on Friday, and they're still working through some of the issues and ideas of what to do. The big thing, I think, that from what he said is right now they're just following the NCAA's calendar, just without a season at the end. Mm-hmm. And the Big Ten already has issued a statement that still holds no pads. Mel seems to think that they'll get the pads potentially at some point. But for now, they're just working in shells. They're working within the hour limits that the NCAA prescribes for the preseason run-up. It's just helmets and shorts and shirts, do some walkthroughs. They can do stuff with footballs. They can do stuff with hands-on coaching. But from Michigan State's standpoint, they're going into the weight room. I think, they're trying to, and it's a different system. It's a different circumstance at Michigan State right now than any other program, because you've got a new coach who took over in February, kind of unprecedented in another way, when Mark D'Antonio retired here. That, you don't see Power 5 coaches make the jump to another Power 5 program at that point. So they were behind as it was. Then they didn't have spring practice. 4 days from spring practice, everything got shut down. Then they were ramping up in July, and then they had a shutdown for a COVID outbreak and 14 days of quarantine. So they're really behind on the strength and conditioning standpoint. So Mel talked about treating it like January right now, and then kind of almost like a lead up to spring ball. But I think that's stuff that, this is, I think, where you see that maybe the athletic side wasn't prepared for the academic side to take the decision out of their hands, because they didn't have this calendar set up. And that's, it's uncharted waters, because the NCAA has got a lot to do in terms of finding out and figuring out the fall sports, the rest of the fall sports. Remember, the FBS is outside of their auspices. They don't govern that. They don't really regulate it other than setting parameters for competition. They don't have anything to do with the college football playoff or any of that. So, they've got their hands full. This has got to come from the conference office. And I think that's partly, on Monday, after the decision was made Sunday, athletic directors started meeting about figuring some of those issues out. And I'd imagine they're meeting throughout the week and into the weekend.
So talk to me for a second about Nebraska going all Jan Brady this week and throwing a tantrum when the Big Ten decided not to play. Even talked for a second about exploring leaving the Big Ten or playing outside of conference. How far did that really get?
Well, I think you saw the biggest cage rattlers right now have been Ohio State and Nebraska. And I don't think there's any secret that you see both of them have political pressure coming from their Senate and congressional leaders to play football. Both states are pretty. I mean, let's face it, Nebraska. That's the pro football team in Nebraska, and Ohio State is the pro football team in Ohio.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not wrong.
Thank you for getting that. I didn't feel like I had to explain that.
I just love the shot.
I mean, I am wearing a lot of orange today, so
I love the shot at the Browns from the start.
I mean,
that's fantastic.
I mean, it's the
That's
whole
well
AFC
played.
North. This is what happens when you're a Steelers guy. I mean, you just take shots at the whole AFC North. But I digress. But from a Nebraska standpoint, that is everything. And there's so many things that this is where you see the disconnect, right? Nebraska. They joined the Big Ten in 2010. They became an official member in 2011. But in that interim, they were kicked out of the AAU, which is the American Association of Universities. Huge research situation, and you have all the top, Ivy League schools and Pac-12 and Big Ten. The only Big Ten school that's not a member is Nebraska, and they were the only school to ever be expelled from that right after getting into the Big Ten. So that was starting off things on the wrong foot. So there's already a little bit of acrimony there. Also, they fell 2 votes short of retaining membership, and by the way, Michigan and Wisconsin didn't vote for them to keep their membership. So let's just say that this has been a marriage of acrimony from the start. Then you put into effect the fact that this is the disruption of their prized cow, so to speak. This is what Saturdays are in Nebraska. This is a year-round program. One of the few kind of year-round programs that doesn't compete necessarily with basketball or any other prominent sports. This is the driver of eyeballs and traffic. But you also realize that Scott Frost and Bill Moose, and to some extent, their president, speaking out of passion, speaking out of anger, whatever you want to call it, aren't taking into account the academic side in a lot of ways. Because you're talking the Big Ten Academic Alliance is $10 billion in research, $10 billion, and that is a significant amount of money on top of the 55 million or so that the Big Ten network provides, which is 20 million more than the Big 12 network. Yeah. So while there's $20 million in money out there, difference between the Big 12 and the Big 10 in TV deals, it's a lot more in research money. So, this wasn't necessarily one of those things that when cooler heads were going to prevail that you would say, oh, this will make sense. There's only been one school to ever leave the Big Ten, and that's been the University of Chicago. And that was because they de-emphasized athletics. Nobody has left the Big Ten for that reason of research. So, I think it's going to be curious, though, to watch going forward. And it didn't surprise me that they backtracked a little bit on that, too, when they started to think about all the money that could be lost and can't be made up anywhere else, especially during this pandemic where everybody's tightening belts.
The research numbers are staggering. I've never even thought obviously you think of the money involved with research dollars, but –
And the collaboration. That's another thing, too. It is. This is – where you start, and that's not counting people, these schools' individual endowments. That's just strictly the research money. And the prestige that comes with it probably even eclipses that $10 billion figure. Oh, by the way, the $10 billion was as of 2019 or 18, I believe.
Could go up. Then.
So, yeah, especially in this pandemic. Listen, the Big Ten has done a good job trumpeting the academic side over the course of the last 5-6 months during this shutdown, what these schools have been doing to help stop the spread, help better understand the disease and the virus and everything else. I'd find it hard-pressed for Nebraska not to understand that part going into this football decision and say, wait a second, we are a university that's beyond this. But, like I said, this is still a marriage that's been married and it's been formed in acrimony from the start. So if the Big Ten, if the Nebraska decides to opt out, I don't know if the Big Ten would really care too much. Because of that.
Kind of a bye Felicia situation and just
yeah.
All right, Chris, 2 questions and we'll get you out of here and let's get back to the family duties and everything. But first of all, earlier this week you tweeted that Atlanta was SEC ACC shared territory. What the hell, man? What the hell?
Maybe it should have been the state of Georgia. How about that?
No,
not even. No.
Nobody in Georgia cares about Georgia.
Everybody in Georgia cares. Yeah, Georgia Tech is the irrelevant school.
The most
I see where we're
franchise in the city of Atlanta are the Georgia Bulldogs.
Correct.
I see where we're going.
The Braves aren't as popular as Georgia football.
Listen, the ACC believes that they have a presence there.
Well, I can also believe that I'm a unicorn, and that doesn't make me a unicorn.
I don't know. Put a little thing up top there. I might believe it.
The ACC also thinks that, West Virginia is on the Atlantic coast, and it's not,
That's not.
That is fair. I mean,
and Notre Dame, you're adding
Notre Dame.
There are a few tributaries up around Maryland from the Atlantic Ocean that you get there, sort of. Atlantic watershed.
Maybe, but now they're adding Notre Dame.
There. But you could literally go to the varsity on Spring Street, which is across the way from Grant Field, and have somebody and not see a soul walk in with a Georgia Tech T-shirt, hat, whatever.
Man,
yeah,
I promise you.
Yeah. So that's number one. Just
okay.
Geographic education.
Yeah,
I defer to Georgia.
We all do.
Okay, and then we're starting a tradition here. The question we're going to get everybody out on, it's the most important question, so we save it for the last one. For you, I know Saturdays are busy, so we'll make it game day Sunday for you. I know that you're time to relax and watch your Steelers. What are you pouring?
What am I pouring? Depends on the day. Depends on the level of shutdown at these parts. Early during, we'll say just the general shutdown. I started with the thing called Traverse City Cherry Whiskey, which I went through a few bottles of that, and it's really smooth, really good tasting whiskey. If you like a flavored whiskey,
very good. Very good.
I do recommend checking the proof on it because it is a lower proof than most whiskey. So if you do try and change up after finishing a bottle or something to a regular whiskey, it's gonna get you. Oh, it's going to get you. It's going to get you. But from a beer standpoint,
it's like the Boise State of whiskeys. It's really nice.
It's very good, but it'll get you.
Difference. You find out really quickly the difference between 70 and 80 proof, and what it does to the body, particularly after a bunch of 70 proof and then switching gears. But I digress. From a beer standpoint, lately I've been really digging on the cheapest possible beer imaginable. And at this point, the price point versus the taste versus the price point versus taste versus the amount of beer, I've been drinking 16-ounce cans of Stroh's American Lager.
Oh, wow, I haven't seen a Stroh since I lived in Michigan.
And this isn't the traditional Bohemian Lager. This is a different blend. So it's a lot. I mean, the regular Stroh's has a little bit of bitterness. This is a smooth drinking beer, and it's
no one ever about Stroh's.
It's $6 for a 6-pack of Pounders.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
it's the Keystone Light of the North.
Listen, I have it's a hard time to find it because I think it sells out so quickly.
Well, yeah.
So I've loaded up the garage whenever I find it. I've got about six packs out in the garage, just kind of sitting, waiting to hit the fridge. But
oh my god!
Or winter. Because
literally,
Drew, in winter they just stick their beer in the snow out there. I'm not
right.
Well,
it's true.
I mean, why would you waste power?
Yeah. In the garage, I could just leave it outside. I don't even need to stick it in the snow. It's cold enough that the garage will keep it. You don't have to wait. There's no garage to fridge. You can just pull it right off the shelf.
Right there.
Meanwhile, it's 108 down here in Texas. Yeah.
It's steamy right now in my garage. I had to put a 6-pack in the fridge last night. So
terrible.
All right, Chris, man, we appreciate the time. I know we're gonna let you get back to the family. Thanks for taking the time away from them. Amazing insight, man. Seriously, some really good information. Thanks for breaking some news on the podcast as well. And hopefully we get back to playing sports. We'll get you back on again.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And, I'm glad you guys got to see the kids in their finest hours.
Thank you so much, Chris.
All right, you got it.
Well, our thanks again to Chris Solari for joining us, beat writer for Michigan State for the Detroit Free Press. As you can tell, a really knowledgeable guy on the subject. Drew, I thought an interesting conversation. Even broke some news on the program this week, which, hey, for episode 1, man, what can you add?
Not bad at all. No, his and that news was something that I kind of wondered about in the back of my head, because it looks like that's kind of the road that people are starting to go down. You're seeing it in the NBA and in the NHL that bubbles work. And you're seeing how I think college football will look if they play, which is the MLB, except it'll be more of that first part where the Marlins were getting sick and the Cardinals are still sick. Just little pockets popping up here and there, and then you have to, put the fire out. So I think that's what you're going to more see. So in my opinion, I think you've got people scrambling so hard to try to get this vaccine, which vaccines only work as much as the people that don't take it. I mean, we don't have kids, thankfully.
Yeah. And we should have precluded, or should have started, by the way, saying thank you to Chris for fighting through the kids. And I know he should say fighting through, but doing the interview with the kids and everything. We know it's a pandemic, folks. He's working from home and taking the time for us. So thanks for hanging with us through that interview. He's got 3 little ones at home, and he was being daddy by himself today while mom was out doing some stuff. So certainly thanks for Chris for that one.
Absolutely.
Too. Everybody's taking that interview with us. Sorry.
Absolutely, and that's part of the reason. I don't think either one of us has the patience to have children, so when we meet somebody that has that patience, God bless them.
Yeah.
And thank you for wanting to continue the human race. Because I'm good, but I think that's what I really do believe that's what you're really going towards. It was also interesting to me to hear his insights on Mel Tucker and Ryan Day's kind of conundrum, where they don't really have any direction from the conference as far as what they can or cannot do. The only thing that they really know is that they can't have pads right now.
And Mel Tucker at Michigan State's in completely uncharted waters, having no spring practice after coming over from Colorado, which a little bit of a surprise move. He left Colorado for Michigan State after such a short tenure, but he went to Michigan State from Colorado, didn't get a spring practice. Now he really didn't. He had like 3 summer practices in shorts and shells, and then they had to cancel it up. So how do you get guys to continue to learn the playbook, to learn the terminology? Is it through Zoom meetings? Is it through something else? Make sure their conditioning is right, because if you do play spring football, they're going to have to be ready to go in January, February. And the one thing we didn't talk about with Chris, when you think about the Big Ten and the idea of spring semester football, I know everything's spring, April, May. They're going to play at the beginning of February if they do this. Okay, folks, February is the worst time of the year up there. Okay, take it from someone who lived in Michigan for 4 years. I am married to a Michigander. The first day I moved to Michigan, it was, I think, February the 3rd. I went out that night with some new coworkers, and I was a Southern boy. I grew up in the Deep South. And you remember those old bank clocks that used to tell you the time and the temperature outside the bank? So we're heading to a night after an evening hours establishment to go have some drinks, meeting folks. And that thing's scrolling. And it said -2 degrees.
They can do that? They can say that?
Yeah, apparently so. It was not fun. And I have been to a Michigan State game in November where I sat on seats after an ice storm blew through the night before. I can only imagine what a February game in East Lansing would look like. Or even think Minnesota. Go up even further. Go to Minneapolis and think about playing a football game there in February.
Which... It's funny that you bring that up, because I can remember watching Game Day. I've got Game Day recorded from the final week of the season, and the game days out there is sleeting and everything like that. And I went, well, at least they're playing in the Metrodome. I mean, at least they've got that. And
they don't have that anymore.
That's
that's gone. But they do have the Viking Stadium that does have a dome.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess they could play there, but where's Wisconsin going to play? Because Lambeau's not enclosed.
No.
You're going to move Wisconsin to Miller Park, where they at least have a retractable roof?
Northwestern's got to play outside no matter
Northwestern's
what.
got nothing in Chicago to go play. Iowa's got corn, so
yeah. What are they going to do? Play at the Field of Dreams?
They're going to build a field inside that children's hospital and let everybody play?
Last time I checked in Council Bluffs, they didn't have a dome stadium.
No, I lost some money in Council Bluffs, and I lost a side of my rib laughing at a cabbie there, but sorry guys, but when you grab a cab leaving the casino at 7 a.m. while you're at the College World Series, and the cabbie starts talking about his stripper
stepdaughter,
things get wild. It was entertaining.
And also, you did not mishear that. That was leaving the casino at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Not 7 p.m.
Hey, we made first pitch the next day, though.
You daggum right we did. Thank goodness it was a 4 p.m. pitch.
But yeah, I wonder, like, the Pac-12 doesn't have that problem, right? The worst you have in the Pac-12 is Seattle, which is just, it's rainy. You might get a little sleet.
The Palouse isn't fantastic in February.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle and Oregon will be cold, right? Maybe Salt Lake City could be bad for the Pac-12. Yeah. Colorado. Yeah. Okay, Colorado theoretically.
Colorado could be nasty, but
yeah, because Colorado's weird. It can snow in May in Colorado. Trust me.
That's true.
I've spent way too much time in Colorado, and it's weird out there. But you can also get 75-degree days in the middle of February. There, it's if you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes. That's a saying out there.
Exactly.
But I don't know how you play if you're the Big Ten in those conditions long term. Like Ohio State could. I guess there's no dome stadium in Ohio they could play in. Indiana could at least go. Indiana, Purdue, and those guys could at least go down to Indianapolis, right?
Yeah, you could do Indianapolis.
Michigan State could play in Detroit if they had to.
You could play at Ford.
Yeah.
But even Rutgers. What's Rutgers going to do?
Yeah, Rutgers there's nothing near them. Maryland doesn't have a dome stadium near them. Although Maryland, the weather should be better.
That should be better.
And honestly, New York in February, it's cold, but it's usually not that snowy. It's okay.
Yeah, it's more just nasty.
It's gross. I go to New York a lot for my day job, and it's fine in February. It's just cold. Like, okay, it's cold, but rarely do you get the foot of snow that you will see at other places in the Midwest that you really have to have this concern about if you're the Big Ten. So.
You're really going to have to take an XFL approach if you're the Big Ten. And you're actually going to do this because, in my opinion, that's just lip service. I
don't think they're playing in the spring. I don't think there's any way they're playing in the spring. Because,
and to steal a term from the past couple of years football, your body clock has been thrown off.
It's not even just that. You risk 2 seasons because if you play in the spring, you're going to play a shortened 8 to 10 game season at most. But then there's no way you can ask the kids to turn around and play a full season with summer practice just 2 or 3 months later, or 3 or 4 months later. It doesn't work.
Let me throw this out there to you because, okay, what do you do if I'm Illinois? If I'm in Champaign and I've got 85 kids, but I don't have a whole lot that's going to go be pro.
Mm-hmm.
I, off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody that would be in the first 4 rounds from Illinois. So I've already got my 8. Do what now?
How's their long snapper?
Exactly. How's their fullback look? So I've got 85 kids there. If we start after signing day, I've still got all these freshmen. So what do I do? Okay, well, that's really easy. Let's just extend the limits on scholarships, make it 100. Just make it 100, straight number. Okay, so when does that run out? Is that just for this year, or is that because it's the calendar year of 2021? Illinois opens the season with Virginia next year. So now Bronco Mendenhall's got 85, and now I've got to prepare for 100? No, that's not going to work.
Well, and that opens up a whole other can of worms, which is how much top talent at D1 schools starts to trickle down even more to Group of 5 or 1 FCS schools, because like you said, well, let's say we grandfather all these kids in for an extra year of eligibility. Well, that doesn't stop graduating seniors in high school. They're still graduating, and they're still coming into college. So there are spots that are going to have to be filled, or either the rosters are going to have to expand, or you're going to see kind of like what we think is going to happen with college baseball next year, because it got canceled already this year, and all of them are getting – you have two things in college baseball this year. One, everybody's getting another year of eligibility. Two, the draft got lowered from about 45 to 50 rounds down to 5 rounds in the MLB. Yep. So college baseball next year is going to be spectacular, top to bottom.
You would be hard-pressed to find a better, more talent-rich year in college baseball ever.
But the same thing will happen with football over the next few years. It's going to have to. The law of numbers says it has to. Well, so you would think maybe you'll start seeing some more group of 5 or FCS schools benefit from that, assuming they're still around, because how many of them can sustain the financial hit?
The other thing that I'm going to throw out there to you, and this is something that I just found out either yesterday or the day before, with the NFL looking to push back the salary cap to about from 190 million, I think is where it is right now. They're pushing it back to about 174 million.
Wow.
So think about all that number crunch that you're going to have. I mean, I want to say that the Saints, if it were next year, the Saints would be $88 million over the cap. Somebody else would be $74 million over. I think the Falcons, who are my team, are $44 million over. So you've got to restructure Matt Ryan and Julio Jones just to get your number down. But okay, so now let's flip that. What's that going to do for guys like Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah.
Do you need to get out now, or should I wait a year? Or if I'm a junior in a couple of years, because let's say 2024 or 25, the cap gets raised again, because let's pray that we all get back to somewhat normal.
Yeah.
By then,
by the end of the year, we're back to somewhat normal.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But if we can get back to that point by 2024 or 2025, all these kids, if I'm a junior or if I'm a third-year sophomore in 2024, heck no, I'm not going to the NFL, because I'm going to wait a year or two just to make sure it gets back to normal for my contract.
Your timelines aren't wrong, right? Because if you, just like Chris told us earlier, he's talked with infectious disease experts and people he knows
Absolutely.
And sources that he has, and they've said, look, from the beginning, this is a year to an 18-month process to find a vaccine at best. And that's a fast timeline. I don't think people in the general public recognize how quick that timeline actually is to develop a vaccine with all the research and testing that has to go involved. So yeah, we could be looking at extended play. And, I know people throw out the idea of the bubble and could you play that in college football? I don't see how. I don't see how you can do that and then also continue to make the argument that these kids are student athletes. It just doesn't work.
That's the handshake that you would have to make, because it would be real easy to put the SEC, and we'll just focus on the SEC because it's quicker and easier, to put all the Eastern Division teams in Atlanta, all the Western Division teams in New Orleans. We all play in a bubble, put them in hotels all around, make sure that they don't leave and everything like that, and do what we were talking about with the sports staffs, just make everything virtual learning. Everybody does study hall throughout the week, and then we do walkthrough practices and everything like that. However, if you do that, you have to say, fine, they're athletes. They're here to make us money, make money for their universities, which actually brings up another thought in my head that we'll get to in a second. But it would shoot down the facade, the rest of the facade that's already, taken cannon shot and fodder over the years to the end of the student athlete way of thinking in college athletics.
Yeah, it's going to be wild looking up over the next few years, over the next few months rather, as this plays out in potentially years. We don't know. But we're going to continue on with the podcast, march on and figure out ways to continue to entertain you folks. that's pretty much going to do it here for episode number 1. We hope you enjoyed it. Give you a little bit of insight. This one's probably a little more serious than most of our episodes going forward. But it's a serious topic, right? It's what's out there during the day. We thought it was important to broach. We thought Chris could give you guys some really good insight. And hopefully you enjoyed that interview, because you can read articles all day, but sometimes reporters, they get stopped by how much they can write based on copy lines and things like that within a paper. And so actually getting full thoughts and really diving deep into something with a reporter, especially at the local news level, because those guys at local newspapers, they're so plugged into their communities, into their conferences. They definitely know what's going on. And hopefully you guys enjoyed that conversation with Chris about why the Big Ten decided to pull the plug on the season, so to speak, for now. And maybe more coming. We don't know. We'll hopefully have something more on that to talk about next week. But previewing next week, because when the bourbon's gone, we're done here. That's the way the rules were. But previewing next week real quick, we do have another guest coming your way. We won't spoil exactly who it is, but we're going to go deep into Group of 5 football next week. So we got some conferences we know that right now are going to play. And as long as they're going to play, we're going to act like they're going to play. And let's dive deep into some big Group of 5 football with some analysis and really look at the Sun Belt in depth next week. Good old Fun Belt football. The beauty this year is with a lot of conferences starting later. The SEC not starting till the 26th, the ACC starting late in September. We got a little more time to do some conference previews, and so we'll do that beginning next week with our guest and chat about the Sun Belt and maybe a little bit more as well. Drew, any final thoughts?
No, that's pretty much all I had. Fantastic time this afternoon, this today, getting everything together, and look forward to many more.
Folks, you can follow us on Twitter at FOT Podcast. That's at FOT Podcast. We'll post stuff throughout the week, including links to the podcast and funny memes that we may see around college sports as well. You can also please subscribe us on either YouTube or your podcast platform of choice. Drew, you know where we're going to be, right? Where are we at?
Right now, we're almost on everything. We're on TuneIn, we're on Spotify, we're on iTunes. I use Overcast, which is a fantastic app to get involved with if you enjoy podcasting. As I get more familiar with it, we'll be able to jump ahead if you listen to the entire thing and then want to jump to the interview later and let somebody else listen to it. There's a way that you can do that in Overcast. I absolutely love that app on my phone. But yeah, iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn, any other ones that I can get us on, we will be on. But yeah, especially if you don't want to see these faces that were made for radio, can't blame you there. But yeah, we'll definitely be on YouTube. We'll definitely be, and then we'll still be doing our audio podcast. Should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man, it should be fun. This was Friends of the Program, episode 1. Make sure you go search them on those, or search for Friends of the Program on those aforementioned podcast hosting services that Drew just said. We'll be back next week with episode 2, shooting for a Monday drop. Who knows? Life gets in the way. We'll see. Until then, drink the bourbon. Have a good time. We'll talk to you soon.